All right, guys, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Your Boom is in the Shot. I am TJ, and that is Ben Mojica,
Woo!
my lovely, beautiful co-host.
Oh, I think you TJ.
We are talking today about the not super new, but relatively recent Netflix film, Velvet Buzzsaw, directed by Dan Gilroy and starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
What a man.
Yes, they are reuniting after a few years ago their small masterpiece, Nightcrawler, which, yes, also starred Gyllenhaal and was directed by Gilroy. It is an interesting movie. It's not a terrible movie.
But it's not a good movie.
Exactly. It lives in that little in-between. It's not quite so bad it's good, but it's also not unwatchable either. It's
Yeah, you know, I think I was watching it, and for the first, like, 3/4, I was like, it's a little slow, but really interesting. And I'm, like, enjoying myself watching this movie. And then, like, for the last quarter, I was just like, wow, they really just, like, ruined all of that.
Yeah, they kind of raced to the finish at the end of the movie, and I think that's probably why you felt that way.
Yeah.
And it's also because the movie itself doesn't, like, hold together at all as a whole, really. Like, once it really gets going, I mean, if you buy into its basic premise, fine, but, like, it's such a weird movie, and it's such an amalgamation with different little themes and things and ideas they're throwing at the wall, and it's like, you know,
there's a million little things about that movie that are freaking awesome.
Right, and that's what I was going to get to in a sec, is that, like, there are little isolated sequences and little elements of that are cool. Like, pretty much every sequence where a character dies, like, sandwiched as just their own individual little sequences, are pretty much all really effective, like, suspense-wise and, you know, in terms of dread and fear.
But their inclusion in the movie, I feel like, was kind of like
weird.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, the scenes themselves, awesome. Their place in that movie, not so awesome.
Because tonally they don't really fit, and they're also so wacky that it kind of, like,
it's like
the
they're
movie,
like Final Destination.
that's exactly
you know?
what they are. They're literally like Final Destination scenes sandwiched in this, like, art house movie.
It's like somebody took like Dorian Gray and then, like, put, like, weird slasher stuff in it. Like, it's a weird, artsy, dark, like, kind of mystery-esque kind of psychological film. And then there's just, like, all of a sudden these, like, Final Destination murders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, and that's what I mean. Like, the movie as a whole, like, doesn't piece together super well, especially tonally, like in that sense. But those little elements are good, and, like, the acting on display is 99% pretty good, especially from Jake Gyllenhaal, who shows up to this movie, really commits to this role, and even John Malkovich in a pretty small role.
In a small role, he has so much character.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get into the spoilers now.
Yes.
I don't know when they're coming. They might come really quick. They might not. But I'm going to say, just to start, the acting in that movie was amazing. And I was so, like, I had such a strong emotional reaction to Jake Gyllenhaal's character dying.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you invest in him after a while.
Of all of the characters in the movie, they're all shitty. They're all, like, pretentious, rich assholes who are, like, greedy and whatever. But his character was different.
Because he becomes sympathetic, because he's the only character, really, of, like, the douchebag characters who's like, hey, something's going on. We should probably stop being, like, greedy douchebags.
Well, and he's the only one who's genuine.
Yeah.
So, like, the whole time, he never saw himself as doing anything bad.
Yeah.
You know, the worst thing he does in that movie is that he cheats on his boyfriend, but then he breaks up with his boyfriend.
And he also, like, wrecks this one dudede's career, who, like, he actually really liked, and he was, like, kind of, like, shitty about that, because he was trying to please his, like, sort of
significant
girlfriend.
other. He did it for somebody else, which is why I kind of excuse it. It wasn't the right thing to do. I mean, he's a character who stands by his own sort of code of ethics through the whole film, except in that one moment. And that's one of the worst things he does. And I think that scene is almost more telling for the girl than it is for him, because she asked him to ruin her ex-boyfriend's career.
She also really sets the entire film in motion.
Oh yeah, it's Josephina. She's the cause of played by Zawe Ashton.
Yes.
She's the cause of the entire film. She steals these sort of recluses' cursed paintings.
Yeah. and then tries to market them and sells them and is pretty successful in that endeavor.
Yeah, it's and his dying wish was that they all be destroyed, and come to find out it's because they're all cursed and have his malicious intent inside of them.
Yeah, turns out he himself was probably a murderer.
Definitely a murderer.
There's the scene when Jake Gyllenhaal visits his or Jake Gyllenhaal's character visits his old place of work, and they're like, yeah, somebody like used to talk shit to him, and that dude died.
Yeah,
and like it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
Oh, his name was Morph Vanderwalt.
Morph, that's right. He had a really weird name.
Morph, yeah.
Morph.
Yep, and he was really, really terribly pretentious. But we were mentioning there was nuggets of greatness all throughout that film. Like there was so much great things. His character was one of those shining diamonds in that movie, and a great scene, because I think one thing where that movie really hit it out of the park was its dialogue. There's this wonderful scene where they're at a funeral and Morph is roasting.
Imagine spending all of eternity in that casket.
Yeah,
what an ugly orange.
Yeah, he can't stop criticizing everything in his life.
And then he defends it in a different scene where he's like, they're like, why are you say stuff about people's art? And he's like, well, I'm advancing the field. He's like, I'm contributing a service.
Yeah, well, and he comes off super pretentious in the beginning because, he says things like, oh, yeah, it doesn't have any soul. I'm looking for soul. Or like,
he never should have stopped drinking because now his art is soulless.
Yeah, and like, it's like crazy, but his whole personality, it's not just that he's like a pretentious asshole. I mean, like, his whole world is that sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
So for me, I felt this sort of sympathy towards him because, unlike the other characters, he wasn't just like a greedy asshole. He really believed in what he was doing. He thought that what his opinion was important, and that his, life was important, and that, the pursuit of his work was advancing the world, which I thought is kind of commendable in a sense.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when he finds out that the paintings were acquired in an unsavory fashion and that there was more to it than just, this guy died.
He literally walks away from money at that point. Like he has a whole deal to like write a book about this guy, and he's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And something is happening.
And instead he tries to stop the whole thing from happening by bringing it to light and publishing it in the newspapers that this man, died, and that what his history was and all this other stuff.
And he pays the iron price, ironically getting murdered by a piece of art that he viciously critiqued.
Which is funny in an ironic kind of way, but terrible. Like it was gaudy. It was such a it was the dumb scene. Yeah. I mean, like,
well, what do you think was dumber? Do you think it was that, or the fact that one woman's dead body was on an art display all day long, and everyone just thought it was part of the display?
That was a sick joke, but I thought that was kind of the embodiment of the spirit of that whole movie. I think that one scene, if you had to boil down that whole movie in terms of themes and meaning to one scene, that was it.
Yeah, I can see that.
This is the stylized high art world, and it's filled with pretentious idiots who don't know what's happening.
So they see something that looks like a dead woman covered in blood,
and they all think it's all art.
Oh, it's just really edgy art.
Yeah, and then the kids are playing in the corpse's blood. Yeah, and everybody's like, oh, clapping.
The running joke in the movie that Natalia Dyer's Coco keeps finding pretty much every dead character.
Oh, she finds
pretty much everyone
except for the last one, because she the last one is
girl, the
Velvet Buzzsaw woman. So also the title Velvet Buzzsaw has almost nothing to do with the film.
It's literally just a punk film that like one of the art curators used to be punk band that one of the art curators used to be in, and she has a tattoo of it on her.
One of the 3 or 4 actually terrible characters in that movie. And by terrible, I don't mean they were poorly written. I mean terrible as in they were
terrible people,
written as terrible people.
Yeah.
This basically the characters in this film, and there are quite a few of them, are all really, really well written and well designed.
Yeah.
You have Morph, who's kind of like the most sympathetic. He's almost kind of a hero in this film in a lot of ways.
Even Coco is really sympathetic.
And Coco's the other one.
Poor girl's trying to get a good internship, and like her bosses keep dying.
Yes,
and she's like so nice to everybody.
And she's treated like crap by everybody too. I mean, even the guy who eventually gives her, like the one guy who dies. There's the competing art curator who admittedly doesn't know anything about art. I mean, like, there's a scene where he's in John Malkovich's studio, his character's studio.
And he's like, oh, this art is really cool. And he's like, just a pile of garbage, man.
Just a pile of trash bags.
Garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. And John Malkovich is amazing in that film. Oh my God, the subtlety that was delivered in his lines. That I love the scene when he's playing basketball and the other guy is like, all right, I can't wait for you to show me what you've been working on. And he's just throwing hoops. And he's not saying anything. And
then he shows him, and it's like a curve of like red paint, I think, or something. Yeah. And he's like, "Here it is. What do you think?"
Yeah. Yep. He's like, "This is the one thing that I've been doing for 6 months."
Yep.
And it's so funny because like he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to see the rest of it." And John Malkovich is just looking at him with this deadpan face, and it's just like. And as a viewer, you know, we're all sophisticated viewers. We see that and we know, oh, he doesn't have any more. I knew this when we walked into the studio and there was nothing on the walls. Like, this is obvious to us. And what's great about the movie is it's not obvious to this idiot art curator, and he's sitting there waiting for an answer for a painfully long amount of time. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so cleverly done because it just shows you, like John Malkovich's character is literally, he's an artist in a rut.
Yeah, and he's set up like right away too by like Jake Gyllenhaal's character, by Morph, like saying, like, looking at his art now that he's sober, and like he never should have quit drinking,
right?
You know, and like because then he comes in, he's walking around, he seems like he's like the total douchebag, like walking through this event and like getting a drink and everything, or not a drink, but like getting like the platter and like a non-alcoholic drink or something.
Yeah,
and but you realize he's just like kind of over this whole culture.
Yeah,
and he's like not that bad a guy. He's just kind of like jaded.
Yeah, he's jaded, and you know he doesn't die in the movie. Spoiler alert here. He's one of the characters, one of the few characters who doesn't die.
And he finds himself.
And he finds
at the end of the credits scene is like him like finally like he goes to the beach house of the Velvet Buzzsaw woman and is like drawing on the sand on the beach.
He's all alone.
He's just in La La Land.
Everything that he creates is going to get washed away by the waves. And I think there's a bliss in that he was taken away from the pressure of being an artist and allowed to be an artist. And I think that was like a really meaningful point in that film. And I think it almost hints at this idea that art isn't the high art world. And I think there's a few subtle ways that they kind of try to imply that, because there's also the other character, the other artist whose name I can't remember. I love the actor.
He's like the street artist, and everyone's trying to buy him.
He plays a character in Blackish,
and even he like
Daveed Diggs is the name of the actor.
Even he's like, I'm not feeling this art. Like, it kind of doesn't make me feel comfortable. Like he wants to own like a piece of it. He's like, can I buy that? But then also he's like, yeah, something's up, and like I don't want to be associated with this anymore.
Well, he's really interesting because he shows up in the beginning, and he's a street artist, and all of a sudden he's achieved this acclaim from the high art world, and they're all trying to get him into the, you know, they all want to show his art and sell his art for lots of money so they can all make money. And they're all trying to entice him, like, oh, look how much money you can make. And for a really long time, he's like, I'm not going to do it. You know, like I'm part of a street artist collective, and that's where I belong. And it gets to the point where at one point he just agrees to do it. And I think it's almost implied that it might have something to do with Josephina, because they start dating, you know, in a way before he like basically dumps her. Because he needs to go back and be a street artist, because he realizes that the high art world is not.
He's like at the crux of like that clash that this movie is like discussing, in a way of like where, you know, art smacks headfirst into economy. Well, and finance.
And he's really interesting because he represents the same, in my eyes, he represents the same kind of art that John Malkovich's character represents in that credit scene. That's completely separate from the pretentious art. I'm just an artist.
I'm not here to like make money. I'm just here to like express these things that are in me.
And not only does he do a great job acting that character, but at the end of towards the end of the film, when he decides to not follow through with being, having his work shown in these galleries, he goes back to the artist collective. He's completely spared from all of the drama that happens in the show.
Yep.
Or in this world.
Yeah, both him and John Malkovich.
Him and John Malkovich, and Coco, who also is completely separate. She's just trying to find a job and build a career for herself. And she's
actually pretty dedicated to all of her jobs.
Right. She's great. And there's a really funny scene where she goes to the interview after her first employer dies. And the guy is like, this is the idiot guy who mistakes trash for artwork. He's like, I'm looking for a woman in her 40s. Like, come back to me when you're in your 40s. And it was like, wait, but she's completely and totally qualified, and she's incredibly good at what she does. And you're not even giving her the time of day because you're a pretentious art guy, basically. I mean,
yeah.
it was really funny.
Also,
and then,
there's like that message of like they kind of got what they deserved in a way, which is why Morph's death is weird, because you're like, did he really deserve that? I feel like he redeemed himself.
Right. All of the other characters, they were all pretty shitty.
Yeah.
Morph didn't really do anything overtly shitty other than be kind of pretentious. And his pretension is sort of justifiable in a way that's very different than the others. Like there's the one woman who with the very Cruella de Vil outfit, Gretchen,
the one who gets killed by the ball.
The ball, her arm,
and her body's left on the floor.
She, in my eyes, she's not only pretentious, but she's also malicious. She puts other characters against each other. She's trying to claw her way to the top brutally.
Yeah, because she's like sabotaging Morph. Like she's literally like telling like Morph's new girlfriend, basically sort of girlfriend, that like, oh, he's still talking to his ex-husband or boyfriend or whatever. But then she's also telling Morph, oh yeah, that girl is seeing Diggs now.
Yeah.
And, you know, just throwing this poor guy for a loop.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And she's awful. She deserves it. So then you have she goes out. You have the very first guy to die, who's the art installation.
Guy. Oh, that guy. Oh, that guy who tries to steal the paintings.
He tries to steal the paintings, and he gets high, and he tries to like he hits on Coco when she first shows up.
He gets pulled into a painting full of monkeys,
and
killed by the monkeys in the painting.
By the monkeys.
I think the most interesting death, though, like not to digress like too hard, like sharply right here, but like the Velvet Buzzsaw woman at the end, that was actually really like fascinating how she became the painting.
The painting, yeah.
You know, because I thought she was going to get spared too, possibly, and then like the camera, the way it sets it up, it like slowly pans around until like you can just start to see, oh my god, it's the painting she had in her house, her and her dog.
Yeah,
or a cat, I forget, but
I think it was a cat. It was like a Sphinx cat.
Like her and her pet, you know.
Yeah,
and it swivels around, and you're like, oh,
she is the painting.
Because like, how is she gonna die? Because it's been the paintings that have been like killing people, or the art in general, and so then she becomes the painting herself, and that's why her tattoo, a piece of art, is what kills her.
Well, and they're all killed by art.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is killed by a piece of art, be it graffiti on a street wall or a three-dimensional. Yeah, or a cyborg stat. Well, I guess he's more of a robotic statue, but
yeah, because a cyborg would imply
have biological parts.
Yeah.
That's a science fiction topic for another day.
Yes. Thank you for catching me, Ben.
No, you're good, dude. That's a pan shot, but it's okay.
I didn't hit nothing important.
No, you did not, but it's okay. It's okay. It was your first time.
That's valid.
That's valid. That's valid. First time?
Jake Gyllenhaal, though, I just wanted to one more time talk about him because he has become such an amazing character actor. Like the way that he just embodies every character he's played for the last several years.
I've never seen a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal in it that I haven't been like, wow, he's really good.
He's good in everything. He's literally good in everything. But he's just like in recent years, he's become such a character actor. Like in Nightcrawler, you know, he like becomes that character. And then like the next year, he played Southpaw, and he's so believable as like a jacked MMA fighter.
Yeah,
you know, he's like Christian Bale in the sense of like he can put on all of this, you know, weight and lose all this weight. And he's also like super fit in this movie too,
which is really funny because he's got terrible posture.
Yeah,
on purpose because that's part of the character. Yeah. This is one of those. This is what exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he gets so into it, and like just the voice and the mannerisms and his little weird like tweaks and stuff that he does. Is awesome, and like it makes that character so believable, and it so sells it. Like not for a second you're thinking this character is ridiculous, but not for a second are you not believing it.
Right,
you're like this character, yeah, he's ridiculous, but this is like an actual person.
Well, and looking back on some other films from Jake Gyllenhaal's like filmography, I mean, you can look way back to Donnie Darko days. That's a character in and of itself. I mean, he plays it excellently, an angsty, mentally ill teenage boy. Yep. And then we have like Jarhead, which is that's
another really great one.
PTSD suffering war, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and then character. He's in I forget what it's called. He plays this cop in this one movie. I'm sad that I can't think of what it was called.
It's okay. It's okay. It happens. We can look at some of the other great movies in The Day After Tomorrow. That's that. I don't know if you remember.
Was he in The Day After Tomorrow?
He was in The Day After Tomorrow.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
He was in Brokeback Mountain.
Oh well, yeah, Brokeback. Yeah, he's pretty notorious for
Pretty
that
notorious
one.
for
Forgot
that
about
one.
Brokeback Mountain. But both him and Heath Ledger do get really into their characters.
Yeah.
And are really believable in that movie. Like all
Absolutely.
memes aside.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that one was it End of Watch that you were thinking of? Because I think he plays a police officer in that one.
Yeah, I think it is End of Watch.
October Sky. Wow, I remember watching that in middle school. He's in Okja.
Oh yeah, yeah, he is.
Okja, an amazing movie, guys. If you're science fiction fans, you should watch Okja. Really important message. I'm a huge fan of Bong Joon-ho.
Of Snowpiercer fame.
Snowpiercer fame.
Yeah, another great movie.
But yeah, no, he was Prince of Persia.
Oh, yeah, I never saw Prince of
Jake
Persia.
Gyllenhaal was Prince of Persia.
Yeah. He's going to be Mysterio pretty soon too.
Yeah, what an just. We're on a huge tangent here, but what an amazing actor.
It's a worthy tangent though, because seriously, like, he's the best part of this movie. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff too, but his performance alone is just something to behold. In everything that he's in. And this movie's no exception.
But he's the shining star of this movie, hands down.
Which is why they were smart to put his face on every piece of marketing.
Yeah. Well, he's also the biggest name in the movie, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe John Malkovich is up there, but like, because when you see Velvet Buzzsaw, like, if it was just like the words Velvet Buzzsaw or was any other actor, even if it was John Malkovich, you'd be like, oh, maybe I'll watch that. But when you see Jake Gyllenhaal, you're like, oh, it's a Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
Yeah. See, and the thing about John Malkovich is he's in a lot of like weird things.
Yeah.
So like, I'd be able to see a movie that has John Malkovich in it and be like, well, that might not be for me.
Yeah. I mean, he literally has a movie about him, a character being him.
Yeah,
that's called Being John Malkovich.
Yeah,
yeah, he's such a weird dude that has so much. He's in so many weird things and has so much weird stuff about him.
And is such a great actor.
Like the first movie I ever saw him in was Of Mice and Men.
Yeah,
where he's literally like Lenny.
Yeah,
he's like mentally handicapped, and he sells that character so well. But like, he has a weird filmography for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But Jake Gyllenhaal, I mean, he has an elaborate filmography, but all
very diverse,
really kind of successful movies commercially for the most part.
And like we were saying, like all movies where he really plays a character and like he really keeps that streak going. Like, yeah, Morph a great character, and so I wanted to bring that back up because I don't want to do like a disservice to that. I want to talk about that as much as possible.
Yeah, that is
very worth talking about.
I think that him and John Malkovich, particularly in this movie, are two of the most significant positive aspects.
And those sequences too, like in the little Final Destination sequences, like just the way that those little sequences are set up, the suspense is incredible.
They're really well shot and really well thought out. It really hurts me because they don't fit in the movie.
No, they don't.
It makes it really hard for me to want to appreciate them, but like I can't avoid the fact that
I just
like,
pretend they're like they're little very short films.
If I had watched, I mean, you kind of have to do that almost. If you're a fan of horror or suspense, those scenes are like candy.
Yeah, they're like Hitchcockian in certain ways. You know, they have the cheese of Final Destination, but the suspense and the dread is Hitchcockian.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Especially Josephina's death, being pulled into the
very
wall
abstract,
by the graffiti,
visually stunning.
Yeah. But yet some of them are like just hokey, like the
Velvet Buzzsaw tattoo.
The velvet Buzzsaw tattoo spins and then
cuts her neck
open. But
the Jake Gyllenhaal death scene is like really suspenseful and scary. It's genuinely terrifying. Like him running through these crowded little corridors in these little like rental spaces, getting chased by this robot on crutches who's like slowly picking up speed and is like, you know, I'm gonna get you. And
I mean, like,
it's just so terrifying. It's such a terrifying looking robot, and like he's just coming for him.
I thought it looked almost comical. I thought that was a comical scene.
I suppose, but there's also like when the art is like looking at them and stuff like that. It's like because you know anybody who's walked by a portrait of somebody is like, oh, their eyes are like look like they're always following me.
Right.
Like, there's always kind of that element to it, and it plays off of that a lot. Or like, you know, when the curator doesn't know what he's talking about, his death scene.
Oh yeah,
where
that
like,
was crazy.
Which is staged as like a suicide. Like he hanged himself.
Yeah, and the hand comes down and grabs his tie.
Yeah.
I mean, that was wild.
Well, there's like that little doll that like kind of is like looking at him.
Yeah.
And like that also adds to like the creepiness factor of it.
And I will say, I think of all of them, if it weren't for Morph's death, Josephina's death, and the Velvet Buzzsaw lady's death, who's, I'm sad that I can't remember her name, but I haven't watched the movie in 2 weeks, so
same.
it's hard for me. But if it weren't for those 3 deaths, I think that the other 2 would have been passable, or the other 3 would have been passable. I think the getting your arm cut off in the sphere thing, Gretchen's death, I think that was really important for the theme of the movie, even if it was kind of out of character. So I think I would have been able to pass that on that one without having too many issues. When it comes to the art installer, his death being pulled into the paintings by monkeys, because it was the first death. I think it was, and it happened relatively early in the film compared to the rest of them. Yeah, I think that's when that was a really long and drawn out scene, because it's him in the car and you see the painting starting to come alive in the car. And then all of those crazy things happen that lead him to getting like taken by the monkeys or whatever from the painting. So that one I kind of pass. But
or the scene where Josephina enters that guy's apartment and she's like looking at the paintings. Like, you know, nobody dies in that scene, obviously, but like that scene is creepy as hell.
Yeah, and I think all those scenes they fit really well in the movie. And I think the guy, you know, the art curator doesn't know anything and gets hung from the roof of that building. Like, that wasn't Final Destination to me. That was supernatural horror to me.
Yeah.
I mean, that I thought that was really, really dark and twisted and fit the sort of theme of the paintings. But Josephina's death was really colorful and really kind of like sort of
abstract.
It was stylized
in a way.
Yeah, and in that I felt like kind of was distracting from the dark and sinister plot that they had been telling. And then I think the same thing goes for the Velvet Buzzsaw death and Morph's death by the statue.
I found Morph's death to be the most similar to the clueless art curator's death in its effect. I mean, it's kind of, I guess if you've seen enough like sci-fi or horror movies that have to deal with like robots coming to life and killing people, it can get cheesy. But I just think just the way that scene is staged, it's very claustrophobic and like it's very like there's no escape. So once he reaches that dead end, you're like,
I think on its own it's a great scene, but
it almost reminded me of Metalhead, like the Black Mirror episode.
My problem was that I think that the irony was what took me away from that and made it comical. The fact that it was
because he was being killed by the art he critiqued
in the very beginning of the film, and that art has nothing to do with the plot of the movie, and except that it shows Morph being pretentious.
Well, so that's a weird thing, then that's the thing that jumped out to me in the movie when I was watching is at first it seems like it's just this guy's art that's cursed, but then it's like other art that's around them becomes cursed, because he didn't make that ball,
right?
He didn't like make that robot. He didn't.
And I think that it's supposed to be that the art cursed the people who profited from it.
Yeah,
but
I thought it was either that or that it was like affecting the art around it.
Yeah,
because it was like they brought this art into their art studios, and then their art started killing them, weird shit.
Yeah, well, and I guess that makes maybe even more sense, because Morph doesn't really profit from the paintings ever in the entire film.
But he has that robot is in that storage unit with the paintings that he was collecting for the book.
That's true.
You know, but it doesn't make that clear, and that's the problem. Is that you have to think about it, and we have to like maybe we're meant to speculate, but I don't think we should, because like it should be very clear. You know, somewhere in the movie that like, oh, it's affecting all the other arcs. Like how does the ball kill that woman?
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and you know another interesting thing about the movie, and maybe if I watched it a couple more times, I'd be able to come up with an answer for this. But when I was watching it in the very beginning, there was a lot of symbolism that I found no sort of reasoning for, or like symbols that didn't have a purpose. In the earlier scenes, there was a lot of eyes. There were close-ups of drawings of eyes. There was a close-up of the robot's eyes. There were like eyes were like a thing that they showed a lot of in the beginning of the film.
That flew over my head.
Yeah, well, and I noticed it in the beginning, and I was paying attention to it to see how it was sort of tied into the plot, and it didn't really seem like it was, and maybe I missed stuff relating to that, but like, I don't know, it was just one of those things that I noticed, and I was wondering like what.
There's a dangling thread. It led to nowhere.
And also, this is coming to me off the top of my head now, but the nature of that movie was kind of critiquing the nature of critiques.
Yes.
In film.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier.
Oh yeah, and we're about to. This is probably or arguably going to be the most interesting part of the podcast, but we're going to get to that in a second. I think that maybe the purpose was that there was no purpose, and that because I think a lot of this is that. These critics are like pointless, and that critiquing is meaningless, and that meaning is found by individuals, and there is no inherent meaning in art.
Yeah. I agree.
That could have been like the point of this like eyes thing. Like there was no purpose to the eyes because there's no purpose
to the movie really at all. Like there's like who cares that like these scenes don't tonally fit? Who cares that like Jake Gyllenhaal's sympathetic character didn't deserve to die, but he did anyway. And, like all these things, because it's like, hey, critique our movie all you want, because A, we're onto your shit, and B, like, critiquing is meaningless and we don't care.
And that's kind of why it feels awful critiquing this movie, because
we're like, oh, we're Jake Gyllenhaal's character now, we're Morph.
We've become the thing that the movie is
making a very big point of being, like, bad and unhelpful.
Which, I feel like there is a place in our world for critique.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's very important. I think that
even just to be a buyer's guide. Yeah, is it worth your time or money or not?
Yeah, right. And I think critiquing is fun. That's why we do this podcast. Because we can sit and talk about was the movie good, was it bad.
But Morph finds this to be a profound and important human experience.
That's true. He does. He does in fact find that to be the case. And it causes him to die.
Yep.
But I wonder, I think that in some ways that movie makes a good case for art, but not a good case for people who talk about art but don't produce it.
Yeah, or who just profit off of it.
Or especially people who profit off of it. Which there are so many layers of hypocriticism or hypocrisy. Thank you.
Hypocriticism.
Hypocriticism. Yeah, what a word. What a non-word. Hypocrisy and like irony and like they profited off this movie. Like they made this movie to earn a profit. It was published, put out in the world. Yeah. Like they profited from the creation.
It is a Hollywood movie that is poking fun at like Hollywood like art, like Southern California art scene, the hoity-toity art scene.
Right. So like that in and of itself is kind of a bizarre concept.
But I feel like also like a lot of the actors are having fun with that because like look at Jake Gyllenhaal and John Malkovich. They're like, yeah, we've been around the industry. This isn't film, but it's close enough. Like we kind of get like they know what like the film douchebags are like and like the hoity-toity art people, and they're kind of like them along with director Dan Gilroy are taking like the opportunity to like poke fun at it and like spoof it, and that's kind of like in a way what they did with like the top of the food chain of like the art world, they did with the like bottom of the food chain of like the production world and Nightcrawler. Like these guys who like literally are paid to go shoot like horrific car accidents and like house murders and like get first to the scene so we can make money for the news station. Like they were spoofing on that in Nightcrawler, and I think they're doing it to like the high art world now, and they're doing it to like the top of that food chain instead of like the little bottom guys who are just fighting for like $500 to shoot this thing instead of millions of dollars to sell this art. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. And well, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I wonder how Gilroy feels about Hitchcock. I wonder if he's a student of Hitchcock in a lot of ways, because Hitchcock kind of has a famous quote. It's like, it's just a movie. And his whole approach to movie making was that, you shouldn't take it too seriously, and you shouldn't, be so concerned with, every minutia of perfectionism. There are scenes that he put in his film that are blatantly unrealistic.
Yeah. Like the girl being sucked into the painting, or the tattoo coming to life.
And I was talking about like Hitchcock movies.
Oh, I got you. Okay, yeah.
And that is repeated in this film. I think that that attitude on,
I mean, like the
on
birds,
filmmaking,
like
yeah,
what is that? You know,
or
the
like
birds
this,
come to life, kill everybody. Well, they not come to life, but like,
but
they
I
become
mean,
evil, I guess.
even in his like practical effects, like look at Psycho. There's the scene when I believe it's the detective who's falling down the stairs, and there's that. It's like, ooh, it's so
The
hokey.
vertigo.
Yeah, he's throwing his arms every way, and he's falling back in slow motion, making a cheesy
Yeah.
face, and the background is blurring, and you know it's cheesy even to audiences of that time. You know, it was a woefully unsophisticated shot, and Alfred Hitchcock did that shit on purpose all the time because, like, it's not about trying to, you know, make a movie that's, you know, incredibly serious and
Well, and clearly they're not making a movie that's incredibly serious,
Right.
but I think they're just taking pot shots. Like they're
yeah.
they're making a movie that's like ridiculous, knows it's ridiculous, knows you know it's ridiculous, doesn't care,
Right.
but is also like, let's take this opportunity to like talk shit about the industry.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's not like Alfred Hitchcock movies because in a lot of ways Alfred Hitchcock movies are serious. They're just sort of
well, they're serious subject matter, but in execution they get wacky.
right,
You know, intentionally. So
as
like you
and
just
as
said.
and as and I think a lot of times Alfred Hitchcock did that as a relief from the fact that his movies were incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. He's the master of suspense. He would make movies that were, you know, psychologically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then he would relieve them with that wacky, it's just a movie sort of mentality. And I think in this film, it's kind of not so much that the seriousness is relieved, but it's almost as if the seriousness is undercut intentionally by the wackiness or the, you know, the Final Destination movies. And maybe that's the point. And if that's the point, then I say that I have to give a lot of props to this movie for doing that intentionally.
Even just for having the balls to do it.
Right. And maybe it wasn't a 5-star movie. Maybe it's not an Academy Award winner, but it's if that was its intention, then I think this film is really, really innovative and sort of ballsy.
It also helps that it's a Netflix movie.
Yeah.
You know, because like people, like if people ended up like not liking this movie or not getting this movie, at least they didn't pay $13 to go see it in the theater. Like they were like, oh, it's on Netflix. Ooh, Jake Gyllenhaal's in it. Right. Check it out. Oh, worst case scenario is I just wasted an hour and a half, 2 hours of my night.
Right.
Like it's not a huge deal.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think the movie probably had a lot more wiggle room to do crap like that. You know, and you can give it more props in the end of the day because you're like, you didn't really waste anybody's money. Like you just, you know, maybe people didn't get it and you wasted their night.
Right. And I think that Netflix was the right platform for a movie like this because it goes directly to the people who will appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think on the big screen, I think a general audience wouldn't get this movie because I don't think it's really meant for a general audience.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Like the people who would watch this movie are people who would see it on Netflix and seek it out intentionally. So in that regard, I think that maybe this film is better than we give it credit for.
Yeah, I guess now in our critique, we're realizing what there is to appreciate about it.
Yeah, I mean,
I still think it's a movie that, on the whole, you know, isn't amazing.
I think fundamentally it is flawed in that it's not an enjoyable movie in the way that
of brilliance.
Yeah, it's filled with so many great ingredients, and they just don't come together in a way that's particularly enjoyable or memorable. I think I'm gonna watch.
The ingredients is a good way to think of it.
Yeah,
they had amazing seasoning and like really fresh veggies, but like they cooked the stew too long.
Right?
And,
yeah,
you know,
it's
served it cold,
and it is. The movie is too long. The movie is too long.
Yeah.
I think that we would have been better served with maybe if those deaths didn't even happen on screen, if we knew that they happened, but they weren't the point.
Their bodies were just found or something.
Yeah, and I think that if you had ended the film maybe half an hour earlier, having not gone through those Final Destination murders, I think as a movie it would have been better.
Would have been tighter.
It would have been tighter. Yeah, I think it would have. It would have been more traditional and more sort of normal. But I don't know if that would have achieved what the film was going for. Like I think maybe there's a strong possibility that this was a movie that could have never been good by virtue of its subject matter and
yeah.
Like I don't know. It's
but again,
kind of
like it just doesn't really care to.
No,
At
right.
least
That's
I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think it was trying to be an Oscar winner.
Yeah.
And I don't think it ever could be an Oscar winner. So it's not a great movie, but it's also exactly as good as it wants to be, which is commendable.
Yeah. Because again, like Gyllenhaal, awesome in it. Malkovich is awesome in it.
Yeah. And it's a lot of great performances.
Yeah. And there is great cinematography.
A lot of great cinematography.
Really great suspense.
Yeah. I think there's every individual part of this movie is pretty good in and of itself, but it just doesn't come together in a way that is particularly enjoyable. I think it was long.
It's kind of boring.
It's kind of
a lot of parts.
Yeah.
Drags.
Yeah. I mean, there's not enough of that suspense in the mystery for it to be a mystery thriller.
Yeah, because it's like exposition. Here's a suspenseful scene. More exposition. Here's a suspenseful scene.
Yeah, and I think it was almost
Instead
more
of just having a through line of suspense.
Yeah, and this movie was almost more of a character study than anything else.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And you can't have a great movie with just that. And you can have really interesting movies with just that, but there's so much more that goes into a film, and I think that it. Do I think you guys should go out and watch it? Yeah, I do. I think
Yeah, check it out.
I mean, if that's the kind of, if you're interested in that sort of sophisticated dialogue, if you're interested in thinking about things in a way that maybe you haven't before,
if you like Jake Gyllenhaal,
definitely
worth your time.
It's worth your time. If you are like a lot of us out there and you want to watch a big epic space battle or flashy romance or an epic story, this is probably not for you.
Yeah, but you could do worse. You could do a lot worse, no matter what kind of movie you're into.
Yeah.
Than seeing this movie. And there are pockets of brilliance, like we said, and there are things to enjoy about it. And the worst case scenario is you wasted a couple hours. It's on Netflix. Like we all have Netflix accounts pretty much these days.
Right.
Almost everybody has a Netflix account. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you probably have access to a Netflix account.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out if you want to.
I think that a lot of our other episodes we have a lot more to talk about generally.
Yeah.
And I think we're running short of what our normal episode length is at this point.
Definitely.
Which is kind of sad. But I think it shows the flaws in this movie is that there's not really much to talk about except for those character things that we've already brought up. Having said that, jumping off of your little Netflix rant there, I think this is a good time to maybe sort of hint at some new stuff that we're doing here with the podcast. If you're interested, TJ, in me kind of talking about that a little bit. I don't know.
What are we hinting at?
So that's valid. So we were talking about earlier the idea of maybe sort of branching out and doing some new things. And I know in the last episode I mentioned maybe doing some genre specific episodes.
Yes.
We've been bouncing around a lot of ideas about where to take this podcast forward. Or how to take this podcast forward. And we would really like to hear from you guys, first of all, because it helps us sort of refine what we're doing here. We want to build a show that's rife with audience participation, because this isn't just for us. This is for everybody who's interested in movies and anybody who's willing to have a discussion about it.
Let us know what you want to hear,
Right.
or what parts of our show you like, what parts of our show you don't like. Give us your criticisms. You be the morph to our art.
Our art. Yeah. And as always, we say, hit us up on the email. Your boom is in the shot at gmail.com. I have a bad habit of saying .gmail.com, but it's not. It's at gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Sure
yeah, sure. It sure is. Anyway, we also would really appreciate if you guys liked and subscribed. I have a feeling that this episode isn't going to get as many viewers as some of our more flashy ones.
It's one of those things like we also talked about The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which was another Netflix movie. It's a little more niche like this is. It's not something like Aquaman or Into the Spider-Verse.
But even Buster Scruggs was kind of
for a bigger audience.
Yeah, but even Buster Scruggs was kind of a successful venture by well-known people. Whereas this one's a little bit more, I don't know, kind of indie.
It's got Jake Gyllenhaal.
It's got Jake Gyllenhaal.
It's got Jake Gyllenhaal.
It gives me an indie vibe though.
Yeah.
Unlike the others that we've talked about.
I mean, yeah. Well, because Ballad of Buster Scruggs kind of does, but it's so big. And
it's too grandiose.
Well, I mean, Suspiria is kind of indie-ish feeling, indie art film kind of feeling.
That's true.
It's intimate in that
anyway,
way,
this is a tangent. The point is, I'm as a gift to you guys, I want to talk about briefly some ideas we've been having for the show.
Oh yeah, floor is yours, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, because not only are we happy that you stayed and listened to this whole podcast, but if you're listening to this, then you might have some insight or some interest. Behind the scenes, before this episode started, we were talking about maybe doing a book club or a movie club. Essentially, it would be like a book club where every week or every month, would probably be a monthly thing, we would put out a movie. This is the movie we're all going to watch, and open up a Discord potentially. And viewers who watched the film can then participate in a live stream with us and an open chat, so they could give their own ideas and their own opinions and have some interaction. This would also give us a wonderful opportunity to maybe look at some older films or some films that are great in their own right.
Some sleeper hits.
Tron Legacy, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, Tron Legacy. Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet, we're looking at you. And maybe some movies that are bad that we might not necessarily want to talk about in a full episode, or stuff that we just think would be more fun to have kind of viewer input on. So please, if you guys are interested in maybe doing that, check it out. Write us. This isn't going to be anything that happens anytime soon, but I think it would be really, really interesting. So we were thinking about that, and then that's my little teaser for you guys. Yeah,
we would really love for this to become a more participatory show, I think is the thing that Ben's really getting at here. And I 100% am with him there. It would be really awesome to have a lot more of you guys who are listening, if you're listening, commenting. Just let us know your thoughts. Like, seriously, even if it's like, I hate you.
We want to eat your hatred.
Yes, we will. And we want to shout you out. We want to know you guys are out there and listening and are enjoying or not enjoying our content. And if any of you guys are in the Capital Region area, the Albany area, roughly, in upstate New York, where we
or willing to travel there,
or are willing to travel for our meager little podcast, then hit us up, like, if with what your interests are and what you want to talk about, and if we have an upcoming episode that's congruent with that, we'd love to have you on as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now we're still a baby podcast. We've only put out 8 episodes. Well, this will be our 8th episode.
Yeah.
And we don't have star power behind us. It's not like we're Adam Savage or Shane Told or somebody starting a podcast. People, we don't have a following already. Yeah. So we're building up from scratch. And for those of you who are listening, if you like the show, spread the word. Like and subscribe, spread the word. We're doing a lot of big things. We've got a lot of big plans for the future. In the works, we've got moving onto a full-fledged podcast platform.
Yes, we will be actually on your podcast platforms pretty soon. So you can actually download us on iTunes or Stitcher, Pocket Casts, Spotify, whatever it is that you like to go to. You'll actually be able to download our episodes and listen to them more conveniently on the go without having to keep the YouTube video up or have YouTube Red or something.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be wonderful for those of you who taking a long car ride and maybe you
if you're like me who you like to listen to podcasts on your commute. I'm that kind of podcast consumer. I like to listen to them on my commute, or if I'm at work and I'm doing kind of a mindless task, or I'm walking around campus or something. Like, I like to have a podcast in my ear, and I don't like to sit at a computer and stare at a splash screen or stare at people sitting around a table. Some people really like that, and that's awesome. But there is another section of the audience that is like me and just likes to listen to them when you're doing other things. And us getting onto a service is going to be really helpful for that part of the audience. And so if you're that part of the audience, then that's something to very much look forward to.
Yeah, and that's coming in the coming months. That's not something that's far flung, or maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. I mean, we're working on that actively right now.
It's 100% going to happen.
It's 100% going to happen. It's 100% going to happen very soon. Now, we're not planning on leaving YouTube altogether. YouTube we'll still have YouTube content, exclusive content. Once we sort of gain a more consistent following, and that a lot of that's up to you guys too.
Yep. Subscribe, share,
tell your friends. Once we achieve that, there's going to be a lot more behind the scenes content, a lot more extra content, a lot more content in general. I mean, we really rely on you guys out there to fund this podcast and to make what we're doing happen. And we love it on our part. We hope that you guys sort of get involved too, because we want this to be all of us, not just me and TJ. We've had guests on the show before. A lot of them have been people we know in person, but all of them have been people who listen to the podcast.
Yep. And you know what? The episode that we did so far that had guests on was the most fun episode we've done so far for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great time to talk in a group of people about things that you're passionate about or things that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy, and to debate and discuss. And, you know, Ben and I both know each other's opinions and ways of consuming things pretty intimately by now.
Yeah.
So it gives an extra little flavor and an extra little excitement when we can talk to somebody who we don't know where they're coming from as intimately, where it's like, well, what do you think of the MCU or something, you know? And it's like, we can get a whole new fresh perspective that I think is really interesting and fun for us, and also really, really great for the podcast. You know, it gives the people who are listening another flavor besides just Ben talking shit about everything and me loving everything.
Well, and you know, a big part of it is also that we don't care if you're not film students. We don't care if you're not film people. We want to.
It's passion. If you love something like that's
hell. If you have a vague interest,
something.
if you have a vague interest in movies and you have an opinion, even if you don't have an opinion, you just want to talk and you want to learn something, you want to, you know, ask some questions.
Yeah.
Then we would love to have you on the show, because I think that if you have something that you want to ask us or you want to say on this podcast, there are people out there who agree with you or who also want to know that.
Or who might be enlightened by your perspective.
Yeah,
Maybe you didn't think of it that way before. And
right.
Even though
absolutely.
you're not a film student or an expert or anything like that, you know, they went, I didn't really think of it that way. Now you have enhanced somebody else's like viewing of something and appreciation of a piece of art. And that's an awesome contribution to make to, you know, culture.
Society,
yeah.
all of the above. So please get involved, like and subscribe, email us, tell us what you're into, what you want to, maybe what you want to see for the future, movies you'd like us to review. We're working on some Marvel stuff.
Yeah,
Marvel's a pretty popular topic.
Big Marvel stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be pretty fun.
Get stoked.
Hopefully, I'd like to, if we can swing it, do a Black Klansman episode in the future.
Yeah.
Let us know how you guys feel about that, or a Green Book. That's another one.
And we're
Best
most
Picture.
likely going to be touching on another Netflix piece of content, The Umbrella Academy.
Oh yeah, with Umbrella Academy.
That's probably going to be the next thing we talk about.
Umbrella Academy is very likely to be our next episode. I've just recently kind of finished. I have one episode left.
I'm an episode in,
and TJ's got one episode finished.
But I'm enjoying it so far. You know,
yeah,
so
it's a really interesting show, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with TJ. And if any of you guys finish the show or have seen the show or have some insight about the show or want to talk about the show by next Monday.
This episode will be airing
on Friday,
3/1. So if by Monday 3/4 you have seen it,
yeah, you have 3 days if you're interested. Just a general shout out. We record Monday at 8:00. Mondays at 8:00 always.
Albany, New York, on the College of St. Rose campus, specifically the William Randolph Hearst building.
Yeah, so for all of you guys out there, keep that in mind. If you ever want to be on the show, Mondays at 8:00.
Yep.
And the city of Albany. Those are the 3 big things you need to know. And clear your schedules and come on our show, guys. We want to hear you. We have 7 mics. We have 7 mics that we can work from.
7. That's a lot of mics, guys. Come on.
Yeah. So
We're just like 2 bros. We need like 5 other people.
Yeah.
Come on. Here. Put Ben in his place.
We might not have 7 people on at once, but the point is that we can accommodate you guys, and we can accommodate more than one of you. So
yeah. No, don't just tell a friend. Bring a friend.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Especially if you have a friend who you have a very different opinion from.
Yeah.
Come on and debate.
And this podcast is going somewhere. We might be small now, but we have every reason to be successful in the next year or 2. If you
hell yeah,
come on our show, you come on our show, you might make it big.
Yeah, you get some hipster cred. Yeah, I was on Your Boom is in the Shop before they were cool.
Right. and hey, you never know, if you were one of our earliest fans, we might have you on the show when we are big and famous.
Yeah.
And maybe you could make a name for yourself too, somehow out there talking about movies.
Oh man, I love when you get all pretentious on me.
Oh guys, I want you guys to involve yourself in the show too, and we want to see you. So
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
with that we're gonna call it a night. We filled you in on all of the new stuff. Well, some of the new stuff that we're working on.
Just enough to get you excited. Just a little tease.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah.
All right. Signing off. This has been Ben and TJ with Your Boom is in the Shot. Goodbye.
Peace.